Welcome to the Boxing Lockdown powered by SA Boxing Talk. The two gentlemen are with me, Cyril and Hayden, and we have a very, very special guest. We're going international, and I thought it would be great to get a world-class, a world-renowned, arguably number one referee in the world, Jack Reiss, onto our show. Jack, welcome to the Boxing Lockdown. We in South Africa. We know you in California. How's it going there?
It's going great, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I don't agree with all of it, but thank you. I'll take it. If you're talking about how it's going with COVID, I could just tell you things are starting to get back to normal here. We're on a 4-phase plan. We're in phase 2, phase 3. Once that happens, we're back to boxing without an audience, but we're back to boxing.
Jack, I'm going to open up the question, and it's a question that everyone wants to know. And you are very much part of boxing history. And why do I say that? In 2018, there was a moment of the year, but you were part of that moment. Tyson Fury got dropped against Deontay Wilder. Everyone thought he was dead. If you had waved it off at that point, everyone would have accepted that, but you didn't. Now, the question I'm asking you is, what made you give Tyson the benefit of the doubt when you looked to be dead, unconscious, and start counting?
Well, it comes from a lot of things, but basically training. And I've always been taught to give count a champion out. Give a heavyweight championship fight in the 12th round, no matter who it was, I want to be sure before I rush to a decision. And he got hit with a thunderous shot. He fell like a brick. There's no question about it. So what happened is I quickly pointed to the corner for Wilder to go to the corner, picked up the count. And when I swung my head back around, I noticed that his right leg was up. He was resting on his right foot, which I was a fireman 31 years, an emergency medical technician. I had a paramedic engine company. I know how to read body language. I knew right then and there he wasn't out. I said, well, let's see what we got. So I was counting in my head, moved in, and as I got closer, he started tracking me with his eyes. His eyes were open. They weren't fully open, but he was tracking me with his eyes. And when I got down, I started at 4. And when I got to 5, his eyes popped open really wide, and he rolled over and got up. And at that point, I gave him what we like to call the referee sobriety test. I just watched the mechanism of injury. I just saw this guy's head get snapped, and I can visualize what was going on in that brain. His brain was banging off the sides of his skull. It probably pulled apart from each other. The nerve endings got pinched, and he went out. I got to make sure his lights are fully on when he gets up. So I asked him a couple of questions. He responded perfectly. I made him walk to the right and then again to the left, which he did fantastically. And the rest is history.
Jack, how are you doing over there?
Good. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you? With the whole fight, there was a lot of criticism that came up afterwards. What went through your mind when you heard all the critics criticizing you about the count and everything?
Well, first, I was in shock. I said, I went, what? I couldn't believe it. But then, you got to take it from the source. And I'm going to tell you something. I love Deontay Wilder. I have nothing but the most admiration and respect for him. And you can hear what he has been saying after this last fight he had with Fury about the costume being too heavy and all these just outlandish things. And I got to tell you, if you look back in history, this really promising, unstoppable heavyweight started doing the same thing. And it wasn't because he lost his skills. It was because the people surrounding him were just putting crazy stuff in his head. His name was Mike Tyson. When Don King and Robin Givens got inside that guy's head, he was a different human, and that's what took him out of boxing, not his physical skills, his mental. So I feel that it's not Deontay Wilder. I think it's the people surrounding him that are doing him an injustice. And I took it with a grain of salt after that because 99% of the boxing community just was showing me an outpouring of gratitude and thanking me for doing that. And really, I was just doing my job is all it was, but it was nice to hear, the accolades. So it comes with, by the way, it comes with the territory now because of this thing you and I are on right now, this new thing, social media. Everybody who has a phone has a voice, and there's a lot of keyboard warriors who like to say really nasty things behind the scenes about other people and make criticisms without having any kind of knowledge or information. And, just for you, Colin, I can't tell you how many times I was called fucking kike and Jew bastard over that thing. But it's not the majority of the people. It's just a few. And I take it with a grain of salt, and it is what it is.
And boxing actually needs to thank you, because you created that history. And like I'm saying, that moment of 2018 was when Tyson got up and he defied the odds. When you're down, you get up. Boxing's so parallel to life. And I commend you for that decision. I mean, it just basically revolutionized boxing for two. It made you feel good about the sport again. And I think you need to take a bow.
Quick, can I just say something to that? I understand boxing. I've been fighting since I'm a kid, one way or another. And what people come to see when they come to a boxing match is the human spirit. Someone getting beat and will not quit. And that's exactly what Tyson Fury did. And I learned from some of the best referees and watching them, don't rush to judgment, especially in a championship fight. It's like our Super Bowl or the World Series or the World Cup of soccer. It's not like a little club fight, like a little club soccer show. It has much more importance, and your decisions should be correct, and you should take your time. I don't mean overtake your time, but just make sure you're doing it right.
Yeah, firstly, Jack, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Good to have you on. And I want to jump to a completely different fight. I want to jump to a crazier fight, actually. Logan Paul versus KSI, one that you repped as well. How do you go from refereeing a fight like that to a sort of a weird fight like KSI versus Logan Paul?
Well, again, I'm going to go back to social media, and the world has changed in the last 30 years. And if those of us who don't accept the change are left behind, and people love to see this. That was the most watched fight on the zone. There was over, I think, 17 or 20 million people watching it. And my executive officer specifically asked me to do it. I actually had a wedding to go to that night, and I had to disappoint some very close friends, but they wanted me to do it. And I'm fortunate, coming up through the ranks as a younger referee, I reffed anything. And I reffed a lot of police and fire, Battle of the Badges. I refereed crazy stuff like tough man competitions. I actually fought in the police and fire Olympics against the sheriff. And so I have experience going in the ring with people who have less than professional skills. So I had no problem with it.
Jack, my next question to you is, you give a lot of refereeing seminars at the various sanctioning bodies, at the conventions and so forth, but you come out with your own theory where there's the rules and then there's fair play. And I want you to explain to the viewers what you mean by the rules and then there's fair play.
Colin, thank you for throwing me the softball, because it's very easy to hit. It's a big round ball. I hope you understand that American reference. So let me just say this. I'm doing myself and Pat Russell. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Pat Russell.
Of course, yeah.
Pat Russell and I, by demand, have decided to start and do a 3-day referees course, 26 hours of intense training for anyone who wants to come, whether you're a commentator, a writer, an amateur ref, not a ref at all, or a seasoned ref that wants to up their game. You'll be able to do it at this course. If anybody wants information, go to solearbiter.com, SOLEARBITER.com. Now that I got my plug in, let me just tell you, this is the greatest question, and I love answering it, and you guys will get it. Do you know who writes the rules and policies in boxing? Administrators. They've never been in the ring as a ref, and they've never taken a punch in the face for the most part. So they have no idea as to what they're writing in certain circumstances. And I'll give you a great example. One of the rules that I just got changed, I'm on the rules committee for the ABC. It took me a long time, but I just got it changed. It said, a fighter shall still be considered as down as he is rising from a knockdown. A fighter should not be considered down once no part of his body other than the soles of his feet is touching the canvas. But I couldn't make them understand it. And how it got in there, it was because it was an old rule that came from the days when Jack Johnson and Jack Dempsey were allowed to hit a guy as soon as his hand came off the canvas. They would stand behind the down fighter and crack him, and it was brutal. And the world realized it was brutal and said, there's no longer, that's not allowed. He has to be fully erect before you could hit him. Then they went to, the guy who knocked the other guy down has to go to a neutral corner, and this guy gets a standing 8 count. But they left that stupid rule in, so referees were doing dumb things like, as he's rising, they're going 9, 10, and now he's erect a half a second later, and they're waving the fight off. It's dumb. So what we teach and what I preach is follow the spirit of the law. I'll give you a great example. Fury and Wilder had this second fight. There's some controversy. Was JD's the head trainer, or was Mark Breland the head trainer? I don't know, but there's a rule in effect that says the only one that could stop a fight in the corner is the chief second. Just say Mark Breland wasn't the chief second, it was JD's, and Mark Breland tried to stop the fight. Mark Breland is an Olympic gold medalist, a hell of a professional fighter when he fought, and a very reputable trainer. Am I going to not listen to a trainer that says to me, my fighter's done, he's had enough? Can you imagine the liability that you put yourself and the commission in by allowing that fight continue by a technicality? Oh, no, I can't let him stop it, only the chief second. There are ridiculous rules that have to be corrected, and we're working on them. But that's why I say the spirit of the law. And I'll explain something to you. Here's my theory. 3 things. I always do what's safe. My first priority is always safety. If safety is taken care of, my second priority is fairness. I do what's fair for both fighters. And if those 2 things are taken care of, I do what's best for boxing. And I don't care who you are. You can argue with me all day long. When the promoters stop asking for me, or my commission stops assigning me, then I'll know I'm doing it wrong. But for now, it's common sense. It's the spirit, not the letter of the law.
Yeah, sure. Jack, you've been involved in some boxing movies. I just wanted to find out, what's easier, actual fights or, the movies?
The actual fights. I got to tell you something. Those things are so long and dragged out, and you literally film the same thing 60 times over and over and over. You don't even know what they're looking for, and they put it together and they make it work. But it's long days. It's like 12-hour, 14, 16-hour days sometimes of standing there, doing the same thing over and over again. And I'm not an actor. I just get an opportunity to play a boxing referee in some movies and TV shows. I'm blessed to do it, but I'm not an actor. It's just, play a ref.
Yeah, Jack, obviously you were a judge during the Lomachenko-Salido fights. If you happened to be in the ring at the time, do you think the result might have been a little bit different?
I don't know, but I have to go back and look at the fight. I remember some stuff was going on, and I'm not going to sit here and criticize Lawrence Cole at all. But what I think happened in that fight was Lomachenko's first or second fight. It was his first 12-rounder, and he kept his foot off the gas pedal because he didn't think he can go 12. Because in those last 2 rounds, man, he poured it on, and I think he realized after that he can go to distance. But I think if anything needed to change, that would have been it. I don't know if you guys remember, he was happy just boxing and staying on the outside, really never putting the gas on until the end. So that's what should have changed, not something I would have done different.
What about the low blows and so forth in that fight? There were a little bit too many, I felt.
Well, I'd have to review it to let you know, but let me explain something to you. Lomachenko is a seasoned veteran. He had over 400 fights. He fought in this thing called the World Series of Boxing that I was fortunate enough to ref in. The amateurs fought as pros, and it was guys that are in the pros right now, top professionals. It was the dirtiest boxing I've ever had to ref, other than this KSI Logan Paul fight. But it was some of the dirtiest boxing you've ever seen. And I think Lomachenko was too much up here and not enough just relaxed and doing his thing. So whether it was low blows or like you're saying, fouls, he took himself out of that with the self-doubt, can I go these 12 rounds? That's my opinion.
Jack, you're originally from New York, and obviously growing up in boxing, who was your mentor? Did you have a mentor? So was there someone you looked up to as a referee that kind of guided you, or do you have a referee that you absolutely admire still, that you look up to, or who taught you the ropes besides yourself, naturally, with a bit of common sense?
It's all of the above, and I'll explain. So I grew up in New York watching Arthur McCanty and Joe Cortez, Larry Hazard, great guys. I move out to the West Coast to California, and then I'm watching all these great guys, Mills Lane, Richard Steele, and all these guys, and became a fan. And then I was fortunate enough to pursue my dream, get on with the California Athletic Commission, and I had the most incredible world-class refs to learn from. One guy took me under his wing and became my mentor, and that was a guy named Marty Denkin. And he gave, if you build a house, you need a good foundation, and that's what this guy gave me. He taught me to look at the bigger picture, not just what's in front of me, understand everything that's involved with it. In other words, look at the prior rounds and the damage the guy was taking. Look at the weight he's fighting at. Is this the first time he's at that weight? Has he ever won at that weight? What round are we in? How many, he taught me to take the whole picture, and which really made a big difference with me early on. And then as I got into the ranks, Pat Russell was one of them, but I had Jim Jenkins, Chuck Hassett, Lou Filippo, and great guys. And now, and this is a great question because you can't do it alone. You can't read a book and go in there and make all the mistakes you need to make yourself. You got to learn by coming out of the ring and having trusted people to say, Colin, what could I have done different or better in there just now? And they give you the honest opinion. So I got Pat Russell, this guy, I don't know if you heard of Tom Taylor, referee out here in California, and one of the most brilliant minds in combative sports you'll ever know is Big John McCarthy from the MMA world. We're very close friends, and we're brutally honest with each other. And we've raised each other's game by saying, how about considering this? And it's not easy to take that criticism, but man, it is so necessary.
Yes, Jack, you've overseen hundreds of fights as referee and judge. What would you say was your most memorable, or maybe a few most memorable fights?
Well, obviously, because of the acclaim and the attention that this Wilder Fury fight had, that's definitely one of my top fights that I'm going to always remember. And I got to tell you guys, when it happened, I didn't think anything about it. I didn't think I was doing anything different than what I've trained to do. Instead of waving the guy off real quick, I said, let's see what we got, but the attention it's drawn and the, along with the negative stuff, but far outweighed by the positive stuff. That's been one. But I don't know if you guys remember, I had a great time in this one. I did Andre Ward against Edwin Rodriguez. And those guys, they hated each other. This wasn't just jaw-jacking. They hated each other. When you walked in the arena, you could feel the tension. When I went in the dressing rooms, and Deontay, what's him call it? Duarte, Dion will tell you this, okay? You can go in the dressing room, and when they start complaining right away, it's because they're nervous. They're worried about the other fighter. There's something, they're losing, they have a lack of confidence, or, confident fighters don't act like that. Well, I went into both dressing rooms. These guys, their trainers, the promoters, everybody was in my face complaining about the other fighter in both dressing rooms. And I said, oh, man, this is going to be ugly. And the first 4 rounds of that fight were like a street brawl. And I was doing everything I could without taking a point because, like I said, the theory of the spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law, I don't think I'm put there to take points. I'm there to be like an old beat cop and know that neighborhood, take care of that neighborhood without having to arrest anybody and make people do what they're supposed to do because they know it's the right thing to do. When I have to take a point or worse, disqualify, it's like me pulling out my gun and shooting somebody. I don't ever want to do that. And guess what? 22 years, I've never disqualified anybody yet. So in this fight with Rodriguez and Ward, I was using every trick I had to convince them to calm down, and it just wasn't working. And in the 4th round, they got tied up in a weird position where Ward's head ended up under Rodriguez's arm. Rodriguez lifted like a guillotine, started choking Ward and walking backwards at the same time. So I said, stop, and they both weren't stopping. and Ward threw an overhand right while left hand while he was underneath, and they were going at it like in a playground. And I had to jump on Ward and spin him off. And when I did it, I got punched in the face with a good shot by Rodriguez. So my bell was wrong. I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm an old guy. My bell was wrong. So I called time to straighten it out, and I was stalling so I wouldn't, to get the dizziness out and also to decide what I was gonna do. And I took 2 points from each guy, fined each guy, and got the action going back. And they were pretty damn good the rest of the fight. But it was good for me. It was one of my favorite times.
Yeah, so Jack, when you go back and talk to the boxers and give them their instructions before they get in the ring, and obviously you got trainers that are there obviously chirping and obviously having their say like, hey, watch what this other guy's going to do in the ring. What's the most sort of unusual request that you've ever received backstage from someone?
That's hard for me to pull out right now, but I get requests in different manners. I get requests from guys who are nervous and complaining. Some of them always complain, so you don't even listen to it. And then others have genuine, legitimate concerns, and I listen to those intently. Did you see what so-and-so did in the last fight? And I always tell them, I wasn't the ref of that fight. I'm going to be the ref here, and I'm going to watch this and make sure that doesn't happen. But some of them are trying to get an edge. They're trying to either put me on the defensive or something like that, and it don't work. But I tell you what, if you ever went into a dressing room with Angelo Dundee, let me back up and say this. When I did the movie Ali with Will Smith, and Angelo Dundee was one of the people who was a consultant for the movie. So he was there. He sat down with me and Pat Russell and started telling us stories that were unbelievable. And he said, you know what I do to you the first time you come in to the dressing room? I start screaming right in your face and I point at you. I want to intimidate and scare the shit out of you. Because in the ring, when I yell something out, you're going to listen. I said, it's a hell of a thing. But these are techniques that these guys use. And I'll tell you something else I do, and I'm sure Dion and the other good refs do as well. I don't let anybody say anything to me at the ring except the chief second. I tell them, I will have you removed from the corner. If there's a problem, the only guy I'm going to talk to is the chief second. And I make that very clear in the dressing room. So it sets the tone on how we're going to handle the situation.
Jack, in 22 years that you've been an official, have you ever thought to yourself, maybe I got that wrong? And would you take that back? And what moment or fight was that?
Let me just say this up front. I make mistakes all the time. I'm a human. I've made a lot of mistakes. And there are fights I wish I could take back. There are things I've done I wish I could take back. The one I think, let me say this too. In the old days, we didn't have the tools and the skills we have now. And a good example is when I was first coming on, you were taught, guy gets hit, he gets dropped, he gets up. You okay? Yeah, wipe his gloves, let's go. And then we started, you okay? Walk to me. And he'd take 2 steps, wipe his gloves and go. And then now it's at the point we can make a good assessment on his body, from his body language, by making him walk right and left. And we take a little bit more time because it's better for safety. It's better for boxing overall. So I did Abner Morris against Johnny Gonzalez. And Abner got hit with a thunderous left hook, and he got dropped like a sack. When he got up, and let me say this too, when a fighter gets hurt, he gets dropped, and he gets hurt, or he's on the ropes, and he's getting beat up. As a referee, what I want to see him do is, number 1, run. Distance himself from that carnage. Number 2, hold. Stop the action so he's not going to take any more shots. Then other things he could do is bob and weave, take a knee, spit out his mouthpiece, take a penalty for spitting out his mouthpiece, but he gets a rest, fight back, foul his opponent. And of all those things, I want a thinking fighter. So I'd like to see him do any of those things except standing in the same place and fighting back. Normally, when they're buzzed, they're on instinct. And if you and me got hit in the street and we were buzzed and somebody was coming at us, if we had our legs and our wit about us, we'd be exiting. We'd be moving to regain our composure. When they stand still, it's because they can't move. And that's when it gets me worried. Anyway, with Abner, when he got up, I gave him a shot, and he just stood still, started throwing punches like a fervor, and got hit with another shot where his right leg went under his left leg, and he hit the ground. And as he was getting up, he went to grab for the rope to help him up. He needed assistance getting up, and his hand slid through. He couldn't even find the rope. Just before that, I saw his eyes rolling a little bit, and I waved it off. I wish I would have let him get up. I would have given him the referee sobriety test. He could have proved to me and everybody else if I was going to give him that one more shot. And I can't take it back now, but I've actually told him I'm sorry. I saw him. I said I'm sorry to him. And there's others too. I just got to – oh, yeah, I'll tell you another one too. So Josecito Lopez was fighting Aaron Herrera. And it was a very spirited fight. It was a good fight. And Herrera was in there. It was a close fight. And Josecito caught him with a left hand against the ropes. Unbelievable. Just snapped his head. And this kid was hurt. And he turned and he grabbed the turnbuckle, turned his back on the fighter. So I stopped the fight. And I realized at that point that wasn't the best thing for boxing. I shouldn't have stopped the fight. I should have said, stop. You can't turn your back. You do that again, I'm stopping the fight and you're getting disqualified, and let him continue. Or let him make the choice. I don't want to go on. But I pulled the plug, justifiably so, but I still pulled it too early, if that makes sense. Run out of time?
Yeah, Jack. You mentioned that you've had to apologize to fighters before. How difficult is that? Like, because obviously the fighter at that point is disappointed and angry and whatever.
Well, I'm human, and if I make a mistake, I hope I have enough integrity that I'll raise my hand and say, I made a mistake. If someone's being belligerent to me, I'm not going to waste my time. But like what happened to Mars, we were talking like two gentlemen one night, a long time afterward, and I brought it up. I said, I got to tell you something. I really was sorry I stopped the fight when I did. You know what he said to me? He goes, I was buzzed. I was hurt. I said, okay. But, it is what it is. The belligerent people I stay away from, because really all they want to do is vent. But it's not very hard at all. If you're if you have any kind of soul, it's not very hard at all to do it. If they're belligerent, like I said, I stay away.
Yeah, so my last question is, obviously there is going to be no audience at the moment. Does that change anything with the refereeing that you're going to go through, or does it not necessarily have an impact?
Yeah, it would be great because I won't have to yell so loud because, to get over the crowd. The funniest thing I saw last week was, you guys watched the UFC? Nobody was in the audience, and Bruce Buffer is screaming at the top of his lungs, getting the fight started, and there was nobody in the audience. It just looked really weird to me. But as far as me with having nobody in the audience, it won't affect me at all. Or what you guys might not remember or realize is that when we do these cards for PBC and Top Rank and other entities at the end of the year, they have contracts with their fighters, and they have to get their fighters a certain amount of fights in. So sometimes we do shows with 20 fights on one card, and in the beginning of the card, there's nobody in the audience. Literally, there's 5 people. So I've played to an empty crowd before, and it's not a big deal.
Jack, it's been an absolute pleasure and honor hosting you on the Boxing Lockdown here in South Africa. Just in closing, you mentioned that you have a lot of admiration for a South African judge and referee, Deon Duarte. What's your opinion of South African boxing?
Well, the few South African fighters that I've been fortunate enough to ref, I tell you, you guys are like, in my opinion, you guys mirror Australians and you mirror guys from my neighborhood in Brooklyn, where it's very much about respect, and you come and you bring your best. The fights I've done with the South African guys, it wasn't a dancing match. It wasn't a dancing contest. It was a fight, and it was great to be part of. And you've got some warriors, South African boxers, and it's always exciting. So there's nothing but the utmost respect for the South African boxing program from me. And I'll tell you what, the referees they turn out demonstrate what kind of boxing they have there. Deon's one of the smartest, best referees in the world.
Jack, thank you so much for your time. For your closing shot for South African boxing fans during COVID-19 here in South Africa.
Well, I don't know how bad the COVID is hitting you guys, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. We here in California, things are starting to loosen up here and throughout the United States. And like I said, we are one very close step away from boxing being back. And we're anticipating June 9th we'll start the fights in Las Vegas. Top Ranks having a show, and that's going to just open it up for everybody. So hang in there.
Thank you. Jack, thank you so much for your time. To all the boxing fans tuning in and watching this episode, a big shout out to Cyril and Hayden, but a bigger shout out to Jack Reiss, one of the greatest boxing referees in the world today. This has been the Boxing Lockdown, powered by SA Boxing Talk. We'll catch you again soon.
Thank you guys for having me. Take care, fellas.